right. Good morning, everybody. I'm Mike Cavanaugh from Regiment, here with our latest installation of Clever Conversations. I'm here with Patrick McKenna. Patrick is the founder of and CEO of Facet Wealth.
I'm not the CEO, actually. I'm the chairman.
Chairman of Facet Wealth, founder of One America Works, and also a GP in Comeback Capital, a Midwestern-based venture capital fund. Patrick, welcome to Clever Conversations.
Yeah, glad to be with you. I appreciate the invitation.
Yeah, what I would love to hear is just if you could give us a look into your entrepreneurial journey. You're doing a lot of great stuff out there. How did you get to where you are with being the chairman of Facet, being the founder of One America, and being a GP at Comeback? Maybe you could give us a look into your entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah, happy to. Well, currently, as you mentioned in your generous intro, I'm primarily focused on investing through Comeback and serving as executive chairman of Facet, which is wealth management, financial planning, very fintech, new approach to a business your audience knows very well. But my journey started originally as an officer in the Army. I was a technology officer in the Signal Corps. After doing ROTC, had a full Army ROTC ride, undergrad, where I studied accounting of all things. And then I went into investment banking. And along the way, I learned a lot of skills that really became vital to my success as an entrepreneur, which started around 2003 when I started my first company called LiveOps with just a talented team of co-founders. And like lesson one for me as an entrepreneur is that you really need to work with amazing people who kind of augment and fill in your own gaps and really knowing your role. So LiveOps was the first company that I worked on as a founder, co-founder, and this was work at home customer service. Everybody knows that now. We're doing Zoom, but this is back in 2003. It's really focusing on a problem. We had a lot of jobs going offshore, and companies were looking for lower cost. And our insight was, using technology, we can increase the productivity of the U.S. workforce, leveraging a new platform. So new platforms are really key, right? At the time, people were just coming online with high-speed internet and very powerful computers, having really powerful browsers. Think of the end of the 2000s, kind of the dot-com bust, but it left us with a lot of powerful infrastructure, including really low-cost telecom. And our insight was, can we actually harness a new workforce, people working from home, using these very high-powered tools to do something other than watch clips of clowns and cats, and that's what LiveOps was built on. And so we built that from 4 people to 20,000 people in 5 years, and 700 people in an office in Palo Alto, and everybody else worked from home. And so that's where my entrepreneurial journey started. It was really a belief in people, a belief that talent is anywhere, and if you put the right tools in front of people and give them access to the market, they're going to do amazing things, and things will emerge. And so and I've gone on, I've started 4 companies total. I've also started 2 investment funds, one an opportunity zone real estate fund back in 2019, investing in the thesis that there's also talent everywhere. And then ultimately with Facet, which we started in 2017, 2016, 2017, it started originally in Baltimore with a hybrid model of work at home and office. And again, it's really built on this thesis that's come through my entire career, is that talent is everywhere. And if you're using tools and technology, you can access that talent and solve bigger problems. And so Facet with financial planning is, how do we give a high net worth experience with, a certified financial planner, which is a very experienced, kind of bespoke one-on-one experience, to the mass market. And again, with Facet, we use technology to lower the cost of delivering that high quality service. And I think everybody on this call, and Mike, you and I have talked about it, really understands, like, it could be very administratively burdensome to do the level of quality that's expected at the high net worth level, to do real planning, cash management, insurance, life planning, life events. Like, there's so many things besides just allocating a portfolio. And so with Facet, and I'd love to talk about it if people are interested, what we're doing there to bring that certified financial planner led experience to the mass market. And the last thing I'll say there is, as an entrepreneur, it's not just enough to change the cost structure. You need to change the business model. And with Facet, we turned it from an AUM business, which is the typical pricing, to a subscription fee or a membership fee. So it's a flat fee based on kind of the complexity of your situation. Could be, do you have kids? Are you younger, building? Are you older and decumulating? And you have a flat fixed fee, transparent upfront, and it's still all you can eat one-on-one with the advisor. But our expectation isn't that the more money you had, the more you pay us. It's actually based on how much service we're offering. So that's kind of a setup for the conversation. Hopefully that's helpful.
It's extremely helpful. And I'm going to come back to Facet. Um, the talent is everywhere comment really caught my attention. And, from how I met you back at, a couple years ago at Comeback Capital, how does that talent is everywhere kind of blend into the Comeback Capital thesis and what you're doing with Scott at Comeback?
So I'll tie a little bit more of the Facet story to the Comeback story. So at Facet, we have about 260 employees, all W-2, no contractors, all employees. And the planners are also, we have about 80 planners, CFPs, and we have exactly 0 offices. Everybody works from home. And
Amazing.
we're in 39 states. And what that's allowed us to do from the beginning is get the best people no matter where they were. And we've built structures in terms of how to manage, how to recruit, train, deliver service, all that kind of stuff in this remote environment, which has allowed us to find the best people. And paying people based on what they're producing versus where they live is really important insight, right? So like making, I don't know, so $150,000 in New York City is not that much. Making $150,000 in Akron, Ohio is a lot. And you produce the same thing in both places. This allows, if you have a model like we have, to actually find the best talent, and you're actually paying top dollar in a different market. Now, Comeback is taking that very valuable insight and then looking at the heartland through the lens of extremely talented people that could do more with less capital, working on new problems that are not being looked at by, say, coastal innovators, right? My view of this is it's a big pie, right? This is not a zero-sum game. Anybody who's thinking that the innovation economy is a zero-sum game has a flawed in their logic, right? Columbus or Pittsburgh or Minneapolis rising and building things does not diminish from Silicon Valley building and doing new things and reinventing itself. It's just not zero sum. And so our view at Comeback is actually to find those highly talented people that are being overlooked. Sure, they're being overlooked because the pie can be bigger. Historically, the people who had most access to what I call the trust network were able to get an idea, get it together, and either move to Silicon Valley, meet people and do stuff, or get a spark of something working. And then their investors say, "Ah, that looks really cool, Mike. Why don't you come to Silicon Valley and I'll give you $10 million versus, right?" And so a small group of people had access to that trust network or were willing to move. And our insight is that's maybe 10 or 15%. And good for them. That's fantastic, right? More people doing more things. But what about that other 85% of people who don't have access to that trust network, or for good reasons, like they're working with an R&D team at a CMU and the best talent that they need to build the best innovation is in Pittsburgh. So moving would actually detract from their success, or they can actually get 2x the output in terms of lines of code by having people making $150,000 full stack engineer versus $350,000 full stack engineer. Whatever the numbers, those are just kind of just rough. They're not intended to be pro forma numbers. It's just an order of magnitude. And so I say, why this? Why now? Why you? And why here?
Yeah. And I've heard you speak about this, and you mentioned it just now with the trust network. Like, you come from Silicon Valley, you've got vast experience. Maybe you could just drill down on how you're building that with Comeback and with Facet, and how One America Works plays into that as well. Just drilling down on the trust network and what that means.
Yeah, thanks for asking about that, because I've been thinking a lot over the last few years about what makes Silicon Valley Silicon Valley. Now, I spent 15 years there, right? So I didn't grow up in Palo Alto, but I spent 15 years between San Francisco and Mountain View. That would be the geographic Silicon Valley. And you know, what I discovered was what really Silicon Valley is this trust network. And what do I mean by that is like it transacts in trust. It lowers the friction, lowers the barriers. So then it's, if you're in the trust network, so you went to Stanford, or you went to Harvard, or you went to CIT, like you can be educated, like you have a gatekeeper in, like if you went to Stanford, did something, computer science or something like that, and you're going to know people and they're like, oh, we know that pattern. Okay, hire them, fund them, right? Another pattern would be like, oh, say you went to, UT, which is here in Austin, where I'm based, and now you're working at Google and you're a full stack engineer. It's like, oh, wait a minute. Okay, you're at Google. I know UT is a great school. I don't know the depth of the quality of it, but I know Google recruiting and also know how they build product. And then you show up to a VC meeting and they're like, okay, I know that you know what you're talking about because you worked at Google, right? Okay, another validation point. The third one would be who your funders are, right? So, say you didn't even go to college, right? There's a lot of people these days who didn't finish college or didn't start college. They self-taught themselves. They're doing stuff. And Andreessen Horowitz sees something in this idea, gives you a pile of money, you're working. And even if that company fails, you then are in the trust network because, oh, you're now not the kid who didn't go to college or, learned how to code on his own, but built something that was valuable enough for Andreessen Horowitz to say, this is a good idea. That means this person's a good idea. You're going to get a job. Your next thing is going to get started. So now here's the thing. So we understand what the trust network is, right? Is actually this validation that lowers friction, but then like, how does it extend? So here in Austin, where I live, again, we've got 5,000 Facebook, 6,000 Google, 10,000 Apple, Oracle headquarters. So now you graduate from UT and you no longer have to go to Mountain View to work for Google. You can work right here in Austin and then get validated in the trust network. And then when you go to your next job or you're trying to raise money, you are already in the network. And you see this like in Indianapolis is a great example, right? Salesforce bought a company called ExactTarget. I don't know, it's probably 6-7 years ago. And instead of shutting it down and moving everybody to San Francisco, they expanded the office. And so the ExactTarget office became Salesforce, and they have like a big cloud operation. There's a bunch of Salesforce operations at a high level in Indianapolis. Well, as a result, a lot of people now are Salesforce people in Indianapolis. So then you get like High Alpha, which is a local fund with like 100 million raised. And now you have all these people who are starting companies who now know what excellence looks like. They have a network, they understand how to do enterprise sales, and they understand CRM. And now Indianapolis has this hub because of an extension of the trust network. So thinking about it that way, as I say, how connected, so as an investor, Michael, I'm looking at it and I'm saying, all right, how connected is the person, is the place, is the idea, their network, and say, how connected is it to this network? And then as Comeback, we actually want to fill in the blanks. We're like, okay, they're locally connected with a great idea, but they're not connected to capital networks. So is this idea fit into, can we, if they're successful, can we connect them to capital networks? Oh, they actually have fill in the blanks. They need a lead product person, or they don't, like there's some places that just don't have enough access to capabilities. Can we help them think through how to deploy their $1 million in the Silicon Valley playbook so they level up to get access to this network? So Comeback, we're really pattern recognition, looking at how we find unique signals to success.
That's amazing. So you're solving that issue as the capital solution, knowing what a trust network, like what the fabric of the trust network is, the DNA, and that capital's the missing piece in the Midwest, and Comeback is solving that. Hey, we know what a trust network is. Here's a pattern. Here the dot connection, and then Comeback comes in and says, hey, this is a pattern that we recognize in where they worked, who they've worked with, where they've went to school, and this is a pattern that capital can now be introduced. And it's that gap in the Midwest that it hasn't been a very venture capital friendly environment, and now you guys are kind of building Silicon Prairie.
Right. So in using capital is the way to do it. It's like extending a ladder, right? You still have to climb the rungs of the ladder. You still have to, okay, build your MVP. Does your MVP kind of meet the pattern of what it would look like to receive like global or national level venture funding, right? Does it have, the mechanics of it? And then what we can do is help guide the teams towards, like, I always say this is a very key thing for me personally, besides the 4 questions, is, hey, what are your 6-month milestones? Like, literally, like, what are you focused on and what does that unlock? Because the next really important thing, like, is that, like, what questions are you answering now, today? Because
Got
there's a
it.
lot of questions, but you need to answer them in a particular order. And I don't have the answer, but you as the founder need to have a logic. I'm looking for a logic of, like, each question you answer unlocks value, right? And if you have $500,000 to work with, which is more money in the Midwest than is in the in the Valley, it's like, then I think, can they answer these are the right questions, and can they answer the question with $500,000? Maybe not. Say, well, you should raise more. You really, because you don't want to get stuck halfway through answering a question, right? And then that pattern recognition you were talking about is like, if we think they're asking the right questions and we think they have enough money to answer them, then we could say, okay, we can help them stay focused on the right questions and then introduce them into the trust network with really highly qualified answers with another set of questions that can get funded.
Awesome. And we've been in the seat of helping sponsor and support the comeback events, and we were just in Cleveland with you, and we were in Columbus in the fall, and we really look forward to supporting all of those events in the future. And I know we've got one coming up in Nashville in October. Has there been any more announcements around that? Maybe you could just speak to the Nashville comeback event. And how One America Works. We haven't even talked about that. And that,
Yeah.
You're in Austin. I know that's where One America Works is. Maybe the touch on the Nashville, and we'll start hitting on One America Works a little bit.
Yeah. Thanks for asking about One America Works. So One America Works, I started this about 6 years ago, just with this idea that again, there's talent everywhere, but opportunity isn't as broadly distributed. And I really wanted to have a nonprofit. So it's a philanthropic organization that is focused on convening talented innovators and then retelling the story, right? Just telling the story through the lens of success, because there are so many successful people doing amazing things throughout, particularly the heartland where we're focused. And it's like, can we tell the story of, Xena Clothing now they're in Detroit, about how, she, the founder there, she like had this idea for, STEM-based clothes. And now she's like built a business with millions of dollars of revenue off an insight she had as a scientist working, blah, 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 in STEM. And it's like, nobody would know about it. Nobody knew about her. Everybody should know about her. Right? Or Path Robotics up in Cleveland, Columbus, like solving a problem of welding, using robotics to get the front end of the manufacturing curve. It's like, how do we tell these positive stories, not only to reshape the narrative nationally, so people don't look at the heartland as some flyover state or some like case they better help or something bad's going to happen, right? It's actually, there's a lot of value here. In the national story, people need to understand the value. But honestly, it's the local story to me that's the most important, because a lot of times people don't think that they're worthy. People don't see that what they're building is valuable. And I can tell you, having spent my career between New York and San Francisco, Silicon Valley, and Austin for 5 years, your ideas are incredibly valuable. And telling the story of companies like Float Me down here in San Antonio, who solved a really big problem for attacking the payday loan business, where you can create a nice profit that's not so egregious on the cost to the customers based off of life experience. And there's so many examples of, then here's a really important thing I'm not trying to do. It's going to lead to the convenience. My goal is that when people in the heartland are seeing other heartland success, your positive mindset is important to your success. If you believe you can do it because you're seeing other people who look like you, had your similar background, had your similar challenges, and are you're like Duolingo in Pittsburgh, right? Like you can go public, you can do something powerful. Aurora, another one in Pittsburgh, like, and you say, I can do this. I can do this. And it's not just in Silicon Valley. It's really important. So with One America Works, we try to tell the story through our newsletters, and we do these convenings partnering with Comeback, which are so fun. You've been to a couple of them. It's like, let's just get the regional innovation economy together and just convene them to talk to each other. Usually about a third investors, just under a third entrepreneurs, and then kind of the local ecosystem, government and non-government organizations, and get people talking and seeing themselves and building their own local trust network. So the next one is in Nashville. We don't have exactly the date. It's been moving around. We're going to partner with Vanderbilt. Should be really fun. We're actually going to be up in Pittsburgh doing a VC thing next week. We're going to video it and create video content around a day in like a site visit for venture capital. And we're going to film the whole thing as though you were there. So there are thousands of people who would love to go to Pittsburgh, and we're going to meet 27 companies. And it's like, what does that look like? And we're going to create that and then distribute it. So everybody here on this call and people in our network and around can, instead of having to go to Pittsburgh, actually go and see it through the lens of the 10 of us who are going. So we're trying to figure out ways to tell this positive, affirmative story that creates value and builds trust network. And that's what One America Works is really focused on, is the storytelling.
That's amazing. Yeah. Really looking forward to see the output of the Pittsburgh event. So when you get the videos, send them our way. And Regiment, I would say a proud, member of the trust network you're building, and anything we can do to help support Comeback, One America Works, telling the story, and Facet, please let us know. We're at your service, so to speak, to help build this trust network. I'm going to pause and let people either come on camera or type in the chat some questions. I'll kick off one question because Regiment, our focus is alternative investments. So we help issuers of non-registered securities, whether they're, Reg D, hedge funds, or a Reg CF, company that's raising money through crowdfunding, or a company that needs to meet venture capital, in the alternative space. Does Facet approach alternatives at all in their CFP work with their clients? Do you guys address alternative investments at all?
We've started looking at, we've been looking at it for years as the qualifications have been changing, right? So, what does a qualified investor look like? What does kind of the rules around who has access to these valuable investment vehicles change? So we would say we're open to it. We're looking at it, and eventually there'll probably be some things that will make sense. Typically with our clients, we're really focused on the, low cost, well distributed, low fee type stuff based on where you are. We haven't really done alternatives. Now, there are a few that are in the pipeline that, could make really good sense for our kind of member profile, getting access to different alts, like real estate. There's a bunch of things that actually could make a lot of sense as new products are developing all the time. Up to this point with Facet specifically, we've steered away from it, but we're really being careful with finding the right things that make sense. And over time, I would expect us to find things that would work. But at this point, we're not doing anything in really the alt space.
Got it. Any questions from any of the people in the audience? Feel free to chime in. Can you? One question I always ask people that have had the success that you've had, it's not easy. Is there any memorable moment where there was like a moment where you're like, man, this is hard, like where there was a difficult moment and where you got some inspiration to keep charging through?
There are actually quite a few.
Probably, yeah, there's a few.
Anybody who's been on the entrepreneurial journey knows that there are a lot of times when you have to dig really deep and say, am I on the right track? Am I deluding myself? Is this worth it? This is kind of part of that resilience that's required to kind of entrepreneur anything, whether it's starting a plumbing business or a software company or an investment firm. You're going out on your own, taking a lot of risk and being very vulnerable. I'm going to go all the way back to the beginning, my first company for this one, because I'll never forget. Even though I've been very, I think, traditionally successful, having worked in at M&A, Morgan Stanley in New York City, and had, earned a good living and saved some money. When I started my first company with some co-founders, we didn't pay ourselves for the first year at all. Zero. We paid our engineering team. And so I moved home. Well, I moved to my aunt and uncle's pull-out couch guest room, because they lived in San Francisco, and I was literally pull out the couch every night to go to, and then put it down, because it was also the TV room. And I was 32, 33 years old, sleeping on the couch at my aunt and uncle's house after having, an MBA and working on Wall Street, stuff like that. And every day was a challenge, because you're wondering if you're making the right decision. But the thing that really pulled me through, and this is the story that came, we had work at home. We had a lot of stay-at-home moms. It was our first rep, the people who actually did the phone work. And we had AAA and Pizza Hut and TV infomercial. We had a really, credit card company, we had a big variety of customers. And we would actually get these thank you notes from the agents saying, thank God for live ops. This is the difference between me, doing something really good for my kids and my family. There are no other jobs around. I'd have to drive an hour to be able to work for minimum wage. And we were providing work that created more than money. So I believe work is more than money. There's a lot of pride, self-worth, value when somebody can, contribute to the family. And we would get these thank you letters. I'm like, I had never thought that your workforce would be sending thank yous for the work you're providing. And that really stood with me. And I said, this is worth doing hard things, taking the risk. And eventually we had 20,000 of those reps, actually. And that has kind of pulled through all the work that I do. It's kind of in my mind, who is in my heart of who that we're building a service for. With Facet, the inspiration is my mom. So my mom was a retired postal worker. And when she retired, she walked into an Edward Jones office and was given some really bad advice. I don't think somebody who's retiring and owns their own home, has enough cash to be meaningful, has rental property, should have all her cash invested in a variable annuity. I don't think that's good advice. And that's what was offered to her. And that really upset me. And I said, there's millions of people like my mom, like my family. And I hold that in my heart when we started Facet. It's how do we actually use technology and financial services, which I believe in, by the way. Everybody on your call, I believe financial services are absolutely critical to financial freedom and having, a happy retirement and literally a happy life. But the system wasn't working. And so as Facet got really hard, because then I was in my 40s doing this again, it's we're doing this for the people on the other end of the service. And that's what got me through both live ops when it was even harder, and with Facet when it was am I doing this again? So I think,
is that a pull-out couch behind you?
Yeah, that's right. This is actually a pull-out couch. Yes, that's a good point. But I think the thing that's gotten me through is, and I think it's important, it's who are you doing this for? If you're just doing it for yourself, you have a limited amount of energy, unless you're a massive narcissist, which I don't think most people are. If you can expand your perspectives, expand the scope of who you're doing this for. Are you doing it for your kids? Are you doing it for your family? Are you doing it for these end customers you have deep empathy with? That's the kind of thing that I've experienced as an entrepreneur. And then I look for in entrepreneurs in our investments, what motivates you? And when I say that question, why you? It's important. It's not I have a degree in computer science, right? A lot of people have that degree. But why you on this? That's my big advice. And also as an investor, looking for that connection as well, because it's hard.
Yeah, that's amazing. Patrick, thank you so much for spending some time with us today. Really looking forward to watching One America Works, Facet Wealth, and Comeback continue to grow. And from that human empathy level, the success measurement of just making as many people happy. And watching that grow. It's been fun so far. getting to know you, and can't wait to get to know you guys better in the future. So thanks for coming on, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks for the invitation.
All right.